temples not merely as places of worship, where we come and see the deities, but he viewed temples as places where knowledge is shared. Knowledge about the Gita, knowledge about the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, as Premdas Prabhu said, we'll have an hour class and discussion followed by singing and dancing and on to shouting at the end. So, we'll in our culture, before we start any endeavor, we recognize that whatever we know comes from a long lineage of teachers, that we have a lot to owe in terms of gratitude to people who've come before us, given us the books, given us the knowledge. So we start prayers after we acknowledge them, pay gratitude to them, and then we start the task. So I'm going to start with this first prayer. And Om Adhyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sabitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? And then, Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutan Panditam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami along with his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das, Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Shivas and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates Sri Lalita and Vishaka. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Jagatpate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostate. Oh my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the gopis and the lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Sapta Kanchana Gaurange, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hari Priya. We're doing the English translations for those who are here new for the first time. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. This is a prayer to all of you. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivas and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you to all those brave souls who saw the topic and still made it today. So since we are going to talk about the Kunti mindset, I thought we should start with at least 2 prayers from Kunti Maharani. So we can all chant together. These are in relatively less complex Sanskrit. Krishnaya Vasudevaya, Devaki Nandanaya cha, Nanda Gopa Kumaraya, Govindaya Namo Namaha. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudev, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses. Namah Pankaja Nabhaya, Namah Pankaja Maline, Namah Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankajangraye. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as a lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. Okay, so we'll start with first learning about Kunti Maharani's life and the mindset that she employed her whole life, and question ourselves whether is that something we should fear or is that something we should cultivate. So how many of you have heard about 2 mindsets, through your work or your children's school. Has anyone heard of that? Yes. Okay. So there's a researcher named Carol Dweck, and she published on these two mindsets. One is a fixed mindset, and the other is a growth mindset. Okay, so essentially, in growth mindset, we believe that we have the capacity to grow, and that capacity to grow is coupled with the desire to learn. How are we going to grow if we don't learn new things, right? So people with this growth mindset, since they know that they can grow, they have a foundational belief of that, and they can face challenges head on. They are not afraid of failure. When someone gives them feedback, they are not afraid to accept it. They can accept it they can accept it well, and they feel that they can gain mastery through effort. I may not know this today, but if I practice, if I put in the effort, 2 months from now I will know it. So fundamentally, they believe that they can grow, that they can gain mastery through effort, and they find inspiration and happiness in the success of others. And because they have this growth mindset, this leads them to higher levels of achievement, because they're not satisfied when they reach a certain level. They always want to progress, and hence they realize their full potential. But most importantly, they have a greater sense of agency and free will. On the other hand, people with a fixed mindset think that appearing smart and competent is the most important thing. So if that is the most important thing, and getting appreciation from others is the most important thing, you can imagine when the challenge comes that they think they may not be able to face it, their reaction is to avoid a challenge. So why risk not appearing smart, right? And because of that, they don't want to fail, so they don't take challenges. They don't accept criticism well, and they ignore feedback, and they feel threatened by the success of others. All of this limits their potential. They tend to plateau early, and they start thinking about the world in a very deterministic view. Something is already set, I cannot change, so why put in the effort? If I can't change, why put in the effort? Okay. So what mindset should a person practicing Krishna consciousness and devotional service have? Growth mindset. We should be fixed in our consciousness with Krishna, but the mindset that we should have is a growth mindset. So I want you all to think about a time in your life that gave you the most growth. Take 10 seconds to think about it. And that time that you experienced the most growth, were you cruising along, or was that an obstacle or a challenge that you had to wrestle with, develop new skills, and overcome that? Chances are you were not cruising along, you were put outside your comfort zone, something that you probably didn't choose, it came to you, and you had to persevere that, right? So, and many of us could be facing any of these challenges. Some of us could be facing health challenges, relationship issues, financial challenges. Some of you may be grieving from the loss of a loved one, or loss of your abilities, our own abilities. Some of us may be dreading the impending loss of a loved one, impending loss of our abilities due to illness or things. Okay, so Kunti Maharani's life really tells us what mindset we should have in good times and in bad. Okay, so we'll explore that a little further. This is a technical slide, but after that we'll go into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so there's another researcher. Her name is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and we study about her. As a cancer physician, we take care of patients at very different stages of their cancer. When they are first diagnosed, they're in shock. And then when nothing works, they have to prepare that this may be the end. So it's good for us to know the psychology of them so we can best support those patients. Okay. So this is the paradigm that every single one of us face, even though we don't have an illness. Any catastrophic change in our life, our first reaction is one of denial. How is this happening to me? Everything was fine 2 weeks ago. And totally confused, wanting to avoid or deny the acceptance of reality. Very fearful. And then we go to a state of anger, like, why is this even happening to me? Very irritable. And then when it hits us hard and we know that the problem isn't going away, denial isn't helping, we get to a place of depression or sadness. We're just completely overwhelmed. We feel very helpless. And then we start trying to make meaning of our challenge or suffering. That's a stage called bargaining, where we are struggling to find meaning. We reach out to others, we share our story. And finally, we land at acceptance, where we say, okay, this is it. What is my next tangible step? How can I move on? How can I accept the situation? Okay. Being in Krishna consciousness and doing devotional service helps us to get to acceptance faster. Every single one of us in this room is facing their own challenges. But by practicing devotional life, we get to acceptance faster. It's not like we don't go through any of these stages. We do. We are human. We go through that. But we get to acceptance faster. And how does Krishna consciousness helps us to get to acceptance faster? How does Krishna consciousness and devotional life help us get to acceptance faster? What are some of the things we do?
Nothing happens without Krishna's sanction.
Yes, nothing happens without Krishna's sanction. So that's one aspect. So as devotees, we want to see challenges as opportunities, pushing the problem go away. We embrace it as a challenge to see what does Krishna want me to learn from this situation? How can I get closer to Krishna? And there are many things that help us. One is chanting. Chanting is what gives us our connection to the holy name and Krishna. So those are practices. Next is Prabhupada Prabhu said about the philosophy, knowing that everything happens through Krishna's will by reading the Gita. What else? Chanting Gita, what else? What else do we do in our life that helps us get to acceptance fast? Association, yes. Can you imagine going through this journey alone when we are in trouble? This is why we have this wonderful community where we support each other. We are there for people who are most in need. And when we are in need, we reach out to someone and get through it together. And then we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, pages and pages and pages of examples of devotees who have faced far more serious challenges than what we are facing now. Whatever as an individual we are facing, the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam are filled with people who have faced a lot more. So we have examples, right? We can say, okay, if that devotee went through it, let me emulate that and try to be like waking up early, following a certain diet, right? Everything helps you go through those ups and downs a little better because now you have some discipline in your life. And lastly, what Naveen Krishna Prabhu said, devotee Sangar association. Okay, so I'm going to show this statement. This I got from a lecture by His Holiness Swami Bhagavan Keshav Swami. I'm going to read it and pause and get reflections from the audience. He says that the road to Goloka Vrindavan is through Kurukshetra. So for those who are new here, Goloka Vrindavan is a place where Krishna lives eternally. And our hope is that once we are done with this body, with this life, that we will be able to be in Krishna's presence in Goloka Vrindavan. So I just want you all to think about this statement. What stands out to you when you hear the road to Goloka Vrindavan is through Kurukshetra? Because if you see the map of India, Kurukshetra, you can go to Vrindavan without going through Kurukshetra. It doesn't mean mechanically you drive first to Kurukshetra and then go. That's not what it means. So what stands out to you when you hear that? Oh yes, thank you. Thank you, Leela Manshi. So Kurukshetra is a metaphor for the battlefield of life. So Bhagavad Gita as it is, which was written by, the English translation was written by Srila Prabhupada, is a conversation between the Supreme Lord Krishna and a warrior named Arjuna in the middle of a battlefield. There's a historic fratricidal battle between two families happening. Arjuna is paralyzed whether he should fight his own family or not, and Krishna gives him instructions. And that's a metaphor for our life. Now we are calm, we are listening to a Sunday feast lecture. Monday morning, 8 is when you meet your reality at work, right? So all what we are reading here, we need to apply it in the outside world. So Kurukshetra, the battlefield, is a very real metaphor for our life. So yes, Prabhu, you wanted to say something?
Pretty much what I was going to say, like the material world that we're in, dealing with the things we deal with is like.
Absolutely, yeah.
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. Yes, yes.
Kurukshetra also reference Dharma Kshetra, is the battle for Dharma. What is doing right, when we're doing, how we're doing. It's conflict all the time.
Yes.
Kurukshetra is also a place of somehow taking the side of divinity towards Krishna and demonic side of mind. Without balancing that.
Yeah. Naveen Krishna Prabhu said that Kurukshetra is a place of Dharma Kshetra where you have to make choices between divinity and not divinity. So I think a fundamental reality that we should all accept is that challenges and reversals, whether we want it or not, is going to happen. It's going to come to us. It's an integral part of our life. Those of you, if you can look back at your life 20, 30 years, I mean, people who are older than 30, you'll definitely see that there have been a lot of challenges and reversals in your life. And how we face them sets the stage for the life we want to lead. We have to ask ourselves, what is the life we want to lead? We want to lead a physically and emotionally healthy life, spiritually healthy life. We want to lead a life of impact, that we make a contribution to Srila Prabhupada, who's done so much for us. So that should penetrate our every fiber in our being. A life that's service centric, but most importantly, a life that takes us one more step closer to Krishna, right? And unless we develop the resilience to deal with the challenges in the here and now, in this world, in the material world, I don't think we'll be able to earn the right philosophy we read that has to be applied when times are not good in our life. And Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with examples of resilient people. And that should offer us hope and precedence. I am not the first person traveling this path. Countless people have done this before. And what can I learn from their life to help me? So this is considered to be a very holy month. Time reading and deepening your intensity of your spiritual practices. You don't need to take it from me. These are Krishna's words in chapter 15 of the Gita. This is text 5. And he says, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with past, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who are unbewildered, they know unto the Supreme Person and attain to that eternal kingdom. So all the practices we do, in addition to that, we still have to develop these qualities. All the practices we do, all the reading we do, we have to ask ourselves, are we checking these boxes? And are we unbewildered? I think many of us might not have an affirmative answer to that. And Krishna is saying, only if you develop these qualities, you will know how to surrender. And only then you can attain to that eternal kingdom. So Kunti's life, her life is an example to us. For those of you who may not be familiar, there's a historic epic story called the Mahabharata, and it's about two families, actually a lot more than two families. And Kunti's character is a very critical character. I had mentioned Arjuna before. Kunti is the mother of Arjuna. So Kunti was born a princess. There's not enough time to go over her whole history, so I'm just going to be very brief. So she served Durvasa Muni, who's probably a case and example of anger management. Like if you slide Durvasa Muni the wrong way, lo and behold, he'll curse. So somehow she served him very well, and he was so pleased with her, he gave her a boon. If you say this mantra, you'll have a child. Okay. And she was a very young teenager, very young girl. So playfully she said the mantra, and lo and behold, she had a child. And now she's an unwed mother with a child, and she gave up that child and then moved on. And that child was Karna. And then she married a very illustrious king, Pandu. But due to circumstances, he left his kingdom, went to the forest. So here she is born as a princess. Now she is living in the forest. And due to fate and change of circumstances, she becomes a single mother. Not only is she raising her own kids, 3 kids, but also her co-wife's kids. So she now has 5 kids. She's all alone in the forest. And when her family hears about it, her husband's family hears about it, they say, why don't you come back to the palace, live with us so we can protect you? And so she's dependent on others now to raise her sons. So Pandu's brother, Dhritarashtra, is like the acting king. And unfortunately, Dhritarashtra has a lot of jealousy towards her sons, because Kunti's sons are exemplary people. They are very strong, they're very virtuous, they're very respectful. And many people are very jealous about that. And they are constantly plotting how to kill these children. So she has to raise her kids in an environment surrounded by people who are supposed to protect them, but they're actually trying to harm them. So imagine being in, anyone has had the experience if your child was bullied in the playground, how that felt, how angry you felt, right? Imagine if that was like every day and it was not just plain bullying in the playground, far more serious. And she goes through a series of dangers. Those of you who know the story, can someone say what was some of the natural dangers she went through? What were some of the man-made dangers she went through? So they were living in a palace that was built of wax, and they didn't know that. And Dhritarashtra's son came up with this devious idea to light a fire and burn it down. Everyone thought they got burnt, but they were protected. So that was one. What else?
Child Bhima was poisoned.
Yes. So Kunti's second son is Bhima, and he loves to eat. So you could tempt him with food. And they gave him a big, massive cake that was laced with poison. Since he loved to eat, he dug into the cake, and the Kauravas were not happy that he ate the poison cake. They also pushed him into the water so he could drown. And Krishna protects him, and he is protected, comes out very safe. So that's one. What else? There was a very infamous gambling match where the Pandavas were unfairly, all their assets were taken away. Their wife Draupadi was, people attempted to disrobe her, humiliate her. That didn't happen. So there was, if all of us think back in our lives, we probably have had challenges, but we've had some periods of happiness, some periods of good things happening, and some respite, yeah. But Kunti's life was not one of respite. It was boom, 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 one after another, one after another, one after another. Okay. Then she had to see her sons lose a kingdom, go to the forest, suffer in exile, and ultimately in that big battle in Kurukshetra, she lost every single of her grandsons. All 6 grandsons were killed. All her 5 sons were saved. So this is not an easy life. No one would say her life is easy. So Srila Prabhupada and the other son, Karna, who she had before marriage, was also lost. So Srila Prabhupada has written a wonderful book called Teachings of Queen Kunti. And you can see how much Srila Prabhupada appreciated her example, her life. So I would encourage you all to read it. So, and she has about 26 verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto. Okay. This is a framework I found from a book called Bhagavata Subodhini, written by His Grace Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. When we read scriptures, we are recommended to have 2 different ways of reading. One is the view of a lion, and the other is the view of a bird. Okay, when a lion pounces on its prey and moves on, it's always looking back to see if there's any other danger. Okay, and a bird is at 30,000 feet and is looking from below. Right. So when we read our scriptures, we should say, "What have I read before that either confirms or refutes what am I reading now?" And read with that much introspection. And then with the view of a bird, we have to know the big picture of the Bhagavatam, big picture of the canto, big picture of the chapter, and then delve deep into the verse. So this slide is just showing you the big picture of her prayers. First, they are in 6 broad categories. So I forgot to mention that Kunti is actually Krishna's aunt. So imagine if your nephew was God, how you would be, right? And I forgot to mention one more thing. So the setting of these prayers are, the war is over. The Pandavas now have their kingdom. After many decades of suffering, finally, the Pandavas have their rightful share. They're living in a prosperous kingdom. And Krishna is now saying, okay, my job is done. I have to go back to Dwarka where my people are, and I'm heading to Dwarka. So you see in this picture, he's seated on a chariot, getting ready to go to Dwarka. And Kunti implores and calls out to him and says, can you please stay? So those are the prayers that we are going to be seeing now. So, so the first 3 verses talk about knowing Krishna as the Lord. Okay? Krishna is her nephew, but she doesn't take advantage of that. She doesn't take that relationship for granted. She sees the big picture. She sees him as the Supreme Lord. And her first set of prayers says, I see you within everyone and everywhere. She sees Krishna not just as a person, but within everyone and within everywhere. Then you might ask, if he's within everyone and everywhere, why can't we see him? Why can't we see him? I'm asking you. Okay. She answers that. She says that, we are covered by an invisible curtain of Maya. Okay? And she gives a beautiful analogy. Have you ever seen a movie where the actor was wearing such nice makeup or costume? You didn't even know it was that actor. And then when someone else said it's that actor, you had to go back and see the movie. Yeah. So she's giving the analogy that just like we can't recognize a skilled actor who's camouflaged by makeup, although Krishna's presence is around us and he's around us, we can't see him. And then she takes a very humble position. She says, he is known by very elevated souls, by sages. How am I as a woman supposed to know you? Okay. She takes a humble position, although you can see from these prayers, she's very intelligent, very elevated, but she takes a humble position. So in this set of verses, we can learn that not to take relationships that we have with devotees and with Krishna for granted. Just because we know them well, we have a good relationship with them, to not cross that fine line where we go from knowing to inadvertently offending. And also to take a humble position. Although here she knows all this, but she's taking a humble position, and to intentionally develop that humility. And then the next thing she says, I'm very fortunate. That when I read that, I was like, I don't think she's fortunate. Like, she's gone through XYZ's too many troubles, but that's how she thinks of herself. I'm very fortunate. And she also says, not only am I fortunate, but his parents are fortunate. Devaki, Vasudev are the biological parents of Krishna, and Nanda and Yashoda are the foster parents of Krishna. And she says that all of them are fortunate to have had a part in Krishna's birth. And then she says, I'm very fortunate to see your form. So the two prayers that we recited, these are those two prayers in the beginning. So she describes Krishna's form in detail, that he's wearing a garland of lotuses. His eyes look like the lotus. His feet are like the lotus. And we haven't seen Krishna. We've seen Krishna here as Radha Natabar, but Kunti has seen it, so we can trust her words that that's how Krishna looks like. And then she says, you saved Devaki from Kamsa. And she says, I am more fortunate than Devaki, because you didn't save Devaki's sons, but you saved all my sons, right? Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that Devaki at least had a husband. She had someone to protect her. Kunti had no one. Her children were very young when her husband died. And Krishna bestows the greatest favor upon the devotee who needs the most. So these are things that we can learn, that despite all what she went, her mood is one of gratitude. When she sees Krishna, what do we do when we come to a place of worship or to a temple? We start with our laundry list. Give me a promotion, give me this, give my son this, we have a list of demands. Here she has Krishna in front of her, and you don't see a demand yet. She's still glorifying Krishna. And when we come to the temple, we can also recite some of these prayers. Learn those, make an effort to memorize them and recite them. And she lists in elaborate detail all the calamities that you all said. The wax palace, the disrobing, the gambling match, the poison cake, and all of that. And then the next thing she says scares a lot of people. Because the next verse she says, let those problems happen over and over again. And people are terrified. That's why when I say they fear the Kunti mindset. I've heard that some devotees don't even read that verse, because they think, if I read this verse, then Krishna will give us problems. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that challenges and reversals are an integral part of life. They're going to come. Whether we like it or not, they're going to come. Okay? What Kunti is saying is, she's not saying, let the gambling match happen again, let the poison cake happen. That's not what she's saying. She's saying that when I'm in trouble, my consciousness is very elevated. I am thinking of Krishna all the time. If that's what it takes for me to have that elevated consciousness, if that's what it takes, all those problems, if that's what it takes to have that consciousness, let those troubles happen. Okay? So we need to look deeper into what she's saying. And this is a very elevated state, but these are her words. And then she says, what are the qualifications to approach Krishna? Krishna is her nephew. What about all of us? What are our qualifications to approach Krishna? And she says, Krishna doesn't care about how much wealth you have, how much education, how much scholarship, property, fame. He doesn't care about all that. He cares about one thing, your sincerity of purpose. And many of us would have gone through a phase where you were chasing some goal in life. You felt like, if I achieve that, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. How many of you have achieved happiness that way? How many of you achieved your goals? We achieved our goals, but the happiness was elusive, right? And then we say, okay, maybe if I'll get that, and then you realize it's not happening, right? So, and at some point we get materially exhausted, and only those people can approach him sincerely. Okay? There's a certain complacence that comes when you have too much of something. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have it, but it does mean that when you don't have it, you can approach Krishna with a lot more sincerity. And he says that she says to Krishna, you are the property of the materially impoverished. You're above the modes of nature. You're self-satisfied and gentle. Okay? So she is describing all the qualities of Krishna. And she says, I see you as time. Okay? Even if you say, I don't see Krishna, all of you are affected by time. You have to get up by a certain time. You have to show up to work at a certain time. You have to do your duties at a certain time. And she is seeing everything as Krishna. She's seeing, I see you as time. And you're very impartial. Okay? And she goes on to say that Krishna's nature is inconceivable and also bewildering. Sometimes, how many of you have had that experience that you start reading scripture and then you say, this chapter it says here, but then the other chapter it says something opposite to that? Have you all felt that? Yeah? It's a little bit hard to reconcile, right? And we need some patience. And Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna from within will help you reconcile all those doubts. So just be patient and keep reading. And it can be very confusing to people, right? When if Krishna was very opulent, stayed in his own place, then it's different, right? People like are in awe and reverence, and they afford him that respect. But he comes as a human. He comes as a little child who eats dirt. He comes as someone who steals butter. He comes in this picture. You see Krishna happily playing in the Vrindavan forest, and because he appears as human, people underestimate him. It's misleading, and he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about his reputation. He cares about his relationships with devotees. So people think he's partial, but he is not partial. Just like the sun is shining, it's the same sun, but people who are visually challenged may not be able to perceive it. People who choose to build a house with no windows can surely not perceive it, right? So the sun is the same, but our relationship with the sun determines how we see. So Krishna is the same, but our relationship with Krishna makes us tell whether he's partial or not. To those who reach out to him, he's his best friend. To the others, he may not even be visible. And she tries to reconcile contradictions. You're the unborn, you're eternally there, yet you take birth. You don't have to do any work, yet you still work so hard. So she really goes into an elevated state talking about Krishna's qualities. And she says, even fear personified is afraid of you, but you were afraid of Yashoda. And when you cried, and he didn't like pretend cry like our children who can come up with tears in 10 seconds. He really cried when Yashoda was chasing him. So she's very bewildered by that. Like fear is afraid of you, but you're afraid of your mom. So she talks about that. And then she opines on what could possibly be the reasons why Krishna took birth. He is happy in Goloka Vrindavan. Imagine you're in a place where everything, you have people willing to serve you and love you. Would you want to leave that and come to another place? Yet he leaves that and he comes to the earth. So she wonders, what is the reason for Krishna's birth? Maybe one reason is to please the Yadu dynasty, to glorify pious kings. Maybe the other reason is to answer the prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki, who in their previous births did a lot of austerities to have God as their child, to kill demoniac people or asuras in order to protect the welfare of people. And then there's also Brahma with Mother Earth went and prayed and said, all these horrible kings, selfish kings are torturing me. Can you relieve the burden of me? And that's why he came to this earth. And then she ends with saying the real reason is to rejuvenate bhakti. Bhakti is loving service to Lord. Srila Prabhupada could have said bhakti is love, but he said loving service. When you say you love someone, you'll do something to show that love. You'll serve them to show that love. If you like a rose plant, you might take it, you can put it on a vase and do things like that. But if you love your plants or other things, you'll nurture it, you'll take good care of it, you'll make sure they're watered. So when you love someone, you'll do something to show that love. And she says that that is the real reason he came to this earth, to re-establish the power of bhakti and to help all of us that are conditioned by material nature. And she ends, or she also says bhakti is potent. That's the only process we can see the Lord's lotus feet and destroy the circle of birth and death, birth and death. Okay. And then she ends with saying, finally, after all this, we have a prosperous kingdom and all that, but everyone is envious of us now. And now you're leaving us. So only you can protect us. Please stay. Okay. And she says, you are the real reason for the fame of Pandavas and Yadus. Think about a time when you were struggling with some challenge, you finally solved it, and everyone at your work or your family knew that you did it. What's the attitude you secretly have in your mind? Do you say the reason this was successful was because of Krishna, or you secretly think, look how smart I am. I pulled off something that no one could. If you're honest with ourselves, we tend to glorify ourselves, although we might not say it out loud, right? But she's saying, you're the reason for the fame of Pandavas and Yadus. And she goes on to say, our prosperity is because of your glance. Okay? And she says, if you stay, we'll be happy, but the Yadus will be unhappy. Because people in Dwaraka, where Krishna is the king, are wondering, where did this guy go? Like, why is he not coming back? Krishna is not coming back, right? So Yadus are unhappy. And she says, I have to choose between my own family and my mother's family, my father's family. Okay? And she says, please sever my ties with regards to bodily conception. And people look at this verse and are like, they're very confused. They say, what does Krishna mean? What does Kunti mean? Is she saying, I don't want to have any attachment to family? It's not what she means. Srila Prabhupada clarifies in the purport, Kunti's family members are devotees. Why would she say that? What she's saying is, we want to take a close look at the relationships, at our life, at the people we associate with, and ask if Krishna is at the center of those relationships. If our relationship with our family is only through the skin and through blood, that kind of relationship is going to be hard to sustain, and it can entangle us furthermore. And sometimes we might lose our priorities. We might let others influence our priorities. But if our vision of our relationships with family and friends is Krishna is at the center, my kids are devotees and I want them to get closer to Krishna, there Krishna is at the center of that relationship. And that defines the relationship we have with our family. And that's what she's trying to say. And then the last verse, we'll get to it later. I have it, the whole verse, which I think we should all recite. So the Kunti mindset is, at every instance in her life, she could have chosen to be resentful and bitter. But instead, what did she do? Grateful. She chose to be grateful. And how can you be grateful? Only if you see the big picture, right? If you see whatever problem you're going through in a narrow framework, you might be cranky and upset. But if you see that in the big picture, in the big frame of things, then you're able to appreciate and see and be grateful.
And as you said, he's inconceivable, so sometimes we may not even see the big picture.
Yes, yes.
So faith means I don't see it.
I don't see it, but I'm still going to trust that he's going to protect me. That's surrender, right? Even if I can't see you, even if I can't feel your presence, I have faith that you will protect me under all circumstances. I'm just going to trudge along. And she could have chosen to be anxious and fearful. How many of you have had the experience where one bad thing happens to you, two bad things happen to you, and you're shaking in your boots about when is the next shoe going to drop? I've had that. We've all had that, right? And many people get consumed by that. They're so paralyzed, they can't make a decision, they can't take the next step. She could have done all that. Instead, what did she do? After the third calamity, I want us to put ourselves in her position and see, instead of being anxious and fearful, she had full dependence on Krishna. Her shelter was on Krishna, and she was fearless. The courage it would have taken to live in that family, despite so much happening, right? And she could have been depressed, have an escapist mentality. Many of us, we see people who have catastrophic events and they choose escape through many things. substance abuse, other things. We all see that in our patients. She didn't do that. She just tolerated. Sometimes there's nothing else you can do. What can't be cured has to be endured, right? You try your best to address things, but despite your best efforts, some things are out of your control. And the sooner you accept that, the faster you get to a place of tolerance. And she could have easily doubted. How many of you have said that? Where is Krishna when I need him? Okay, there's one honest person. Thank you. Okay. So she could have easily said that, right? And she saw Krishna's hand even when she couldn't see his face. Did she see Krishna when the wax museum palace was burnt? She didn't see Krishna there. Did she see Krishna when Bhima took the poison cake and drowned? No. Did she see Krishna when Draupadi was disrobed? She saw him as cloth, right? Even though she didn't see Krishna face to face, she saw Krishna's hand. And that is the lesson for all of us. We may not see Krishna face to face, but we should see Krishna's hand. And she could have given up her faith on Krishna, become very disillusioned. Sometimes we also go through that periods of disillusionment with everything. And she didn't do that. She surrendered. She always looked back at her life, full trust in Krishna. And more importantly, she forgave. After the war, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari were living with them. She didn't take revenge. She forgave them, didn't hold a grudge, right? That's very hard to do. She could have taught her sons to be vengeful, right? Sometimes even when someone hurts us, we hear things like, I'm going to show you, right? She could have done all that. She didn't do that. And because she modeled those qualities, she encouraged the virtuous qualities of the Pandavas and devotion in them. So many times, those of you who are parents will know, kids can sniff out hypocrisy in 30 seconds. They can see what you tell and what you actually do. And the more you tell and the less you do, the day they get the courage to speak out, they will. They'll say, you told me this, but this is what you're doing. What gives, right? So she was a glorious mother. She modeled those qualities and she encouraged virtuous qualities in her children. And the next thing we do is, and when she went through all these calamities and finally they were living in prosperity, she could have forgot Krishna. How many of us remember Krishna during good times? Very hard, right? She didn't. She remembered Krishna even when times were good. Okay, so for me, the singular lesson we can learn from Kunti Maharani's life is see every circumstance. When I say every circumstance, even the person who's driving you crazy at work. Okay, every circumstance and every person, both within the temple and outside the temple, every person as an opportunity to remember Krishna. And that is the prayer that I want us to read today, 1.8.42. So my Sanskrit is not great, so I'll say one line and then please repeat. Tvayi me ananya vishaya, matir madhupate sakrit, rating udva hatad ada, gange voham udanvati. So may I have a volunteer to read the synonyms? Someone who can project and be loud. Rukmini Mataji.
Vai, unto you, me, my, ananya vishaya, unalloyed, patik, attention, madhupate, O Lord of Madhu, asakrit, continuously, ratin, attraction, udvahatat, may overflow, adha, directly, Ganga, the Ganges, Eva, like, Ogham, flows, Udanvati, down to the sea.
Thank you, Mata. The translation is, O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganga forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. So this is my last slide. So my prayer to Srila Prabhupada and Sri Sri Radha Natabar is that every single one of you take this opportunity to read Kunti Maharani's prayers, the purports in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada's book, Teachings of Queen Kunti. May her life and example give us solace and courage in both good and bad times. Okay? So thank you for the opportunity. We'll pause here and open up the discussion. Hare Krishna. Yes, Lalita.
Very beautiful presentation, very beginning of your insightful personality. Thank you. Really, just two quick reflections that I think I read from Prabhupada in other sources and one I heard from Krishna Maharaj. One place is, I think Prabhupada is saying that she is conscientious of the fact that this is perhaps the last time she is going to see Krishna.
Yes.
So she's very emotional and she's putting. Maybe you have to.
Sure. So Mataji is saying that Kunti is very conscious that this may be the last time she'll see Krishna face to face, and that's why her prayers are tinged with so much emotion.
And the other place I heard from Krishna Maharaj is that how women are not undermined in the real essence, in the process of bhakti. That Bhagavatam begins with the first prayer from Queen Kunti.
Absolutely, yes. Sometimes people have misconceptions: are women really appreciated or not? This is a shining example that women are really at the highest echelons of respect. And you can see the Bhagavatam opens with the individual prayers. It opens with Kunti Maharani's prayers. Rather than thinking ourselves as men or women, I think we have to think about, no matter what body we have, is our consciousness elevated? Is it moving closer to Krishna? Thank you, Lalita. I want to hear from Mother Kamagiri. Can we give the microphone to Mother Kamagiri?
Hare Krishna.
No, you can talk now. I'll just hold it. This is for recording. Don't.
No, don't make
People in the YouTube cannot hear. You can have this.
What I'm probably going to share, they know everything anyway better than me, so. But the beautiful prayers of Queen Kunti, as having the experience of being a mother in this lifetime of so many children, I can relate to all of that. And one of the things that I would say is that, the prayers of a mother are very powerful. And even though the father carries the seed of all living beings, the mother is the one who develops the body and gives a lot of, as it was saying, a lot of her devotion, to her children, because she's actually the first teacher of the children. And teaching the children is very important. Sometimes we take having children not so seriously, but as you were saying, you can say, do this, do that, do this, do that, but if you're not doing it, one day they will develop the courage to share that back with you. Because from the time of their birth, they're learning. And they're learning from everything that they see, even though they may not say anything, but you're teaching something. So Kunti, as a mother, and all of the struggles that she had to endure, the greatest quality that she had was being able to take shelter of the Lord and to offer prayers on behalf of everyone. And that was her greatest glory. So that's what I would share.
Thank you. Yes, Mata. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. Once I
Namaste. My name is Yushika, and this is a beautiful story. Your presentation was absolutely stunning. And this is the first time that I've heard the story of Queen Kunti, and I really related to myself. It took me about 9 years to rebuild my life from zero to where I'm at now. And all during that time, I chose to go on the spiritual path and to continuously to only look at things in a very positive manner. Any challenges that come to my way, and there were challenges, I had to still pull on my spirituality to bring me up. And because of that, I am now very successful and now able to help other people. And being a mother, a single mother, and raising my children to be now they're on their spiritual path. And the relationship with the Father in the beginning was rocky, but I chose to make it to be positive. And now all of that is positive. And then this more and more spirituality has come to me, even being on my path. And so that is a remarkable, remarkable story, even down to now in the office, being able to be that light when someone has a fixed mindset and I'm having the growth because it keeps making you sharper. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, how much more can I handle? My strength, I'm tired, but just being able to continue to go on, it really does help shift the universe. And so I am very, very appreciative to my community here and the history.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Any other questions, criticisms, comments? Mataji?
I just wanted to say that it's been an honor to hear you share the story. It was my first time hearing the story, and you delivered it so nicely. Thank you.
Thank you. We both.
We have 5 more minutes.
Oh, okay, we have 5 more minutes. We have Hadai Pran with us. For those of you who don't know Hadai Pran, he is Hadai Pran, raise your hand. Okay. So he is the one sitting in the front with the big red apple T-shirt. Okay. So he graduated from Ohio State University and is sharing Krishna consciousness in New York City. How many of you have been to New York City? How many of you felt drained? How many of you felt excited? Who are the people who were excited on the 4th day? Still, okay, some people, okay. How many of you felt drained by the 4th day? Okay. I went to New York City. By the 4th day, I was like, I need to get back to Columbus. This is too draining for me. But Hadai Pran has been in New York City for a year. He's part of Radha Govinda Temple, and they go out and do Harinam in the subway. And if you think people here, wait until you go and be in the subway. So you can imagine there's a lot of austerity. So so Hadai Pran, would you like to share something from today's talk? The people you've met along the way?
Hare Krishna. I like this verse. I noted it down that Maya is like an actor, right? We cannot see Maya due to it's being like covered by a screen. I'm reminded of a story by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He writes in his Upakyana Upadesh, instructive stories, and it's about one naughty son, and the son is very he doesn't like to follow the parents, and then so his basic thing was he always wanted to stay in his room. He would have the curtains covered and he would just sleep all day, and then his parents would always beg, please get up the bed and come and do something, go outside, and then he would always say no, 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 and then finally the parents said, at least the minimum you can do is open the curtains and let the sun inside. And then the son said in a very arrogant way, let the sun come inside by itself without opening the curtains. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says that the purport he gives the story is that we sometimes close the curtains on Krishna and we don't allow Krishna to come in our lives because we have to make that sacrifice of opening the curtains per se. At least we have to try to open the curtains. If we just keep the curtains closed and then we say, where's Krishna, where's Krishna? It doesn't really make sense. So I was reminded of that point. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we'll end here and we'll go to the next part. Thank you all.